Coming up next, we're telling the story of 11 songs that truly define one of the most pivotal years in the rock era. Starting with a band so big, they controlled the top 5 spots on the charts, a record that no one's ever come close to. Plus, there was a songwriter who told an epic and sad story behind what inspired his massive hit that moved everyone who heard it. But then decades later, everyone found out it was a total lie. And then there was a song the lead singer of a British band thought was just downright silly. With made-up words, he refused to sing it until his manager forced him to. And even then, he just sang it as a total joke. It became one of the biggest songs ever, and the silly words became part of the pop vernacular. See if you can guess the song before we get to it. There's also the classic song that has made tens of millions in royalties, but they remain unpaid because no one knows who the hell wrote the song. Plus, there's the iconic singer who wrote a song that he knew was a smash, but he gave it to his secretary who made it an all-time smash. Our countdown of the top 11 songs of a special year is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time, especially today. You know, if you remember stuffing your hand or arm down the cereal box to find that ever-elusive prize inside, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Man, I miss that. Make sure to subscribe below right now to be a part of our Music History Daily, and make sure to check out our podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, it's time to jumpstart the time machine and go back to one of the most pivotal years of our entire civilization. Can you guess it before I get to it? Well, it was a time of healing. It was just months after the King of Camelot was taken from us, when a little band of working-class mob tops took over radio and television, especially television, and solidified rock and roll forever and healed our hearts. Kicking off the countdown at number 11, I've got a truly heartbreaking song by Jay Frank and the Cavaliers. It's one that was remade later, Last Kiss.
Well, where can my baby be? The Lord took her.
Now, a real-life tragedy inspired Wayne Cochran to write Last Kiss. That's what he said.
Where can my baby be? The Lord took her away.
The story of a young couple involved in a fatal car crash greatly moved Wayne. He said it was based on a tragic accident about 15 miles from his home when 5 teens were riding in a 1954 Chevy.
In my daddy's car, we had driven very far.
The driver was a 16-year-old kid named J.L. Hancock, and he was dating a girl named Jeanette Clark. They were deeply in love. She was with him in the front seat, and then there were 3 other kids in the car. It was so foggy that the driver, J.L., did not see a flatbed truck on the side of the road until it was too late. The crash killed all 5 of the teens, and Cochran said the response from the community fueled the lyric.
I'll never forget the sound at night, the crying tide.
The only problem was the accident took place on December 22nd, 1962, well after the song was released, so he got away with the story back then because nobody could fact-check it. It wasn't until about 10 years later that everyone found out the truth. He made it up. But he did write Last Kiss as a tender farewell, a heartfelt plea to a loved one who is gone, emphasizing the pain of losing someone just too soon.
She's gonna help, so I got to be good.
The track captured the heartbreak of saying goodbye forever. Wayne Cochran was the first to record Last Kiss, but his version garnered very little attention. It's actually Frank Wilson and the Cavaliers, their rendition in 1964 that connected with listeners and made it the hit that it is today.
Baby B, the Lord took her away from me.
The emotional delivery combined with the haunting melody, that touched a nerve across the country and it became an instant classic.
A little while, I held her close, I kissed her our last kiss.
Again, people were healing from JFK's, can't say the word on here. And then the crazy thing is, part of the song actually came true in tragic fashion for the band who made it a hit. Not long after the release of Last Kiss, the band that made the song famous hit some hard times. During a concert tour, Wilson and the Cavaliers had just left Parkersburg, West Virginia. They were en route to Lima, Ohio for a performance at the Candy Cane Club, and around 5:15 a.m., their manager, Sonley Roush, fell asleep at the wheel. The car drifted across the center line and collided head-on with a trailer truck. Roush was tragically killed in the crash, but Jay Frank, who was sitting in the front seat, and Bobby Wood, the vocalist and pianist from Memphis, who was actually in the back, miraculously survived. Though they did suffer serious injuries, including broken ribs and a broken ankle. Despite the severity of the accident, Jay Frank resumed the tour after just a week off.
My love, my life, that night.
Last Kiss would be covered a lot of times after, most notably by a group called Wednesday in 1974. That one peaked at number 34 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went to number 2 in Canada, I believe.
Where can my baby be? The Lord took her.
The Pearl Jam remade it in 1999, if you remember that rendition. And that one climbed in number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Same position that Jay Frank and the Cavaliers peaked at in 64.
Where can my baby be?
J. Frank Wilson passed away in 1991. Coming in at number 10 on our top 11 songs of 64 countdown, it's a track that helped shape the sound of the British invasion. I got the Zombies with She's Not There.
Well, no one told me about her.
The swirling Rod Argent organ, the jingly guitar riff by Paul Atkinson, and that soulful lead vocal by Colin Blunstone made She's Not There a classic pop track that was quite innovative for its time. I mean, amazing.
Please don't bother trying to find her. She's not there.
I spoke with Rod and Colin and other members of the Zombies about the crafting of one of the grooviest songs ever, 64. Here's what they said.
It was done very quickly. I mean, we had a session, an evening session, where we recorded 4 tracks, and they were mixed the following day. So the whole thing was done in a few hours. So it wouldn't have been many takes, I have to say. It really was written very quickly, and within 2 weeks we were recording it.
I think we rehearsed it at great length so that we were right on top of the song when we finally did go into the studio, and mostly we rehearsed around Rod's piano in
Cakes
in
by
your
my
house.
mum. Cakes and
Cakes
tea by my mum.
By
Yeah.
mum, absolutely gorgeous. And then I think we took it to probably a village hall locally, and we rehearsed it as best we could so that we knew we wouldn't spend too long in the studio.
The 60s is the greatest decade for music ever. I don't think anybody can argue anything else. The 60s were the greatest. And you guys, with so many great bands, you had such a distinct sound, especially the vocal. Tell me about your approach to that.
Well, I was never intended to be the lead vocalist in the band. When we very first started, I was going to be the rhythm guitarist, and Rob was going to be the vocalist. So I had no intention of being a professional vocalist. I had no intention of being an amateur vocalist, you know. It just happened.
You're still working on your first guitar thing for this album, aren't you? This album coming up.
I'm still working on my vocals.
The number 2 hit was the first ever rock hit to use an electric piano as a lead instrument. How crazy is it that decades after its peak on the charts, it was banned from radio for being lyrically inappropriate after 9/11? Obviously, whoever made that decision had no clue what the song was really about. The Zombies' She's Not There, it slinked up to number 12 in the UK, but it was much bigger elsewhere. In Japan and New Zealand, it went to number 1. It was a number 2 smash in Canada, and here on the Billboard Hot 100. One of the best number 2s ever. I love this song.
Eyes were clear and bright, but she's not there.
Rolling down the countdown of the top 11 songs of 64, we're going to party to the sweet music of Dancing in the Street by Martha and the Vandellas at number 9. Now, back in 1964, the scene was hungry for a brand new beat, so Marvin Gaye, Mickey Stevenson, and Ivy Johanna wrote a song to give the people what they were truly craving. And when Martha and the Vandellas recorded their song, everyone around the world was dancing in the street. And how many times has this song been covered? Now, it was supposed to be sung by Marvin Gaye, but he gave it to Motown's secretary turned iconic singer, Martha Reeves. Here's what she told me about that.
It was a competition as to who would get the record from the top producers at the time. The A&R department was directly across from Studio A. So I went over and I peeped in there, and there was this beautiful man, Marvin Gaye, standing up on the mic singing a song called Dancing in the Street. He was singing it as if he was singing to his woman. Calling out around the world. Are you ready for a brand new beat, baby? One of Marvin's things, he called everybody baby or honey because he didn't want to remember your name. Follow him around and, oh, Marvin. And he said, yeah, honey, yeah, baby. He would never call you by your name. Anyway, he was standing there singing this song, and he looked over and saw me I guess I was in ecstasy just watching him sing. He said, hey, man, let's try this song on Martha. There was Ivy Hunter and William Stevenson, the co-writers of Dancing in the Street. And he was standing there singing, and then asked me if I would sing it. I had heard him sing it twice. I'd almost remembered it, but I couldn't feel it the way he was feeling, all romantic and stuff. So I asked him if I could sing it the way I feel it.
Yeah, it's true. Martha Reeves worked as a secretary for Motown, and one of her duties was singing the words to new songs on tapes that would be dispersed to recording artists so they could learn the words. And this led to her getting a shot at singing some backups, and that, of course, led to Marvin Gaye giving her the shot at recording a song that he knew was going to be a smash. He knew it. But he gave it to her, and it became her signature song. Another funny thing is that because Motown didn't really have a budget for the song, instead of hiring a rhythm section, co-writer Ivy Jo Hunter struck a tire iron to provide some kind of percussion on the recording. Instead of singing backup on the track, Marvin Gaye played the drums. Still, the song hit number 3 in Canada and New Zealand and went to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. That's 3 number 2 hits in a row, some of the best number 2s ever. Continue with our top 11 to 64. It's Come a Little Bit Closer by Jay and the Americans at number 8. Now, the songwriting duo of Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart collaborated with Wes Farrell on the writing of Come a Little Bit Closer. Boyce and Hart wrote a lot of hit songs, of course, for the Monkees later on, and Wes Farrell was no slouch either. He was also very instrumental in the making of the Partridge Family, writing many of the songs for David Cassidy and the studio musicians to perform, including co-writing the famous theme song.
Come on, get happy.
So the narrative in Come a Little Bit Closer is pretty simple. A woman sitting in a little cafe feels lonely because her boyfriend Jose isn't there.
She belonged to Batman Jose.
She notices a man she finds attractive and invites him over, showing her longing for some companionship and connection.
I'm all alone, and the night is so long.
The song doesn't explore her feelings for Jose or what might happen afterward. It's all about that immediate moment and her attraction to this new guy, telling him that he's her kind of man. I love the songs of the 60s. So innocent, mostly. Jay and the Americans recorded Come a Little Bit Closer in just a couple takes, but the band was initially unsure if it would be a hit. I mean, its playful lyrics and upbeat melody seemed a bit risky in an era dominated by more, serious or romantic ballads. Yet the irresistible groove and witty storytelling caught on quickly.
Jose's on his way, and I knew, yes I knew.
The single with lead vocalist Jay Black on the microphone reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it went to number 1 in Canada. They eventually recorded a Spanish version of the tune, which did well, and of course, had a major resurgence in a certain superhero movie, a Marvel movie. Here's what Bobby Hart told me about the song.
We would go there weekly, try to get a $50 advance, to get through another week. And so one of those times, Wes said, Artie Rip is taking Jay and the Americans into the studio soon, looking for tunes. You guys want to write something, the three of us? We sat down, which was a great experience because Wes had had a couple of hits. He'd already written Hang On Sloopy, I think.
Hang on, Sloopy, Sloopy, hang on.
So we sat down, Tommy's doing some chords, figuring out what to do, and finally somebody said, well, why don't we do something like the Marty Robbins record, El Paso?
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with her.
But just a little something south of the border song or something, some little story song. I threw out just in a little cafe just the other side of the border as just a, place and to get it started. So Wes sings it back to me with a melody attached and goes on into a second line. She was sitting there giving me looks that made my mouth water.
Just the other side of the border.
It didn't sound right to me. It sounded like it was really off the wall and a little risque, and besides it didn't rhyme. Water and border. And I was a stickler for rhymes, so. But I didn't say anything because I was the new kid on the block. I said, see what I can learn here, right? And the more I listened to it, I realized it did rhyme the way Wes was singing it. Made my mouth water. Yeah, it was the same as border.
Sitting there giving me looks that made my mouth water.
So we just, it was probably a 2-hour process, and it was probably one of the most fun songwriting experiences because of the funny story that we made.
Holding the number 7 spot on the top 11 of 64, it's another classic from Motown's golden age, Baby, I Need Your Lovin' by the Four Tops. Baby, I Need Your Lovin', you know, it's such an incredible song. I was so fortunate to speak with the late, great Lamont Dozier from Holland Dozier Holland that wrote all those great hits about creating the soulful masterpiece, as well as the last living member of the Four Tops, Duke Fakur, who sadly passed away in 2024. Here's what they said.
One day we were sitting there and I just listened to it. I said, let's play this thing and finish the thing for the Tops, you know. While Brian and I were playing the track, because we had the track cut, we had strings on it and everything. And while we were sitting in the office, fooling around, baby, I need you, it just come out. And I'm sitting there, got to have all your love. And we looked at each other, that's it.
It didn't take us long to do the background. Lamont, I remember, had some other nice oohs and ahs put in there. And we did. It's about 45 minutes, maybe an hour it took us to finish the background.
They had that kind of intricate jazz harmony that they would do. And so we had to get them out of that to create a style for them and create a sound for them. So we got the andantes, the girls. And mixed the two of them.
Perfect blend.
Yeah, and that blend, baby, I need. And it was just like a choir thing. And the voices blend so uniquely, you know.
Baby, I need your loving. Knocked it out the park. He really sang that song.
Man, I love that commanding Levi Stubbs vocal. He was the man for sure. The Four Tops had their first top 20 pop hit and their first million seller with Baby, I Need Your Lovin'. Single went to number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100, went to number 4 in Canada. And then 3 years later, in 1967, it was the number 3 hit for Johnny Rivers. How many songs on this channel we covered that they started out as a joke, they didn't take it seriously, and it became a smash that everybody sings? This song is the poster child for that. It's a little song that became part of the pop vernacular, talking about Do Wah Diddy Diddy by Manfred Mann. It's coming in at number 6 on the top 11 songs of 64. Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich, two of the most prolific songwriters of the era, crafted Do Wah Diddy Diddy as a playful, nonsensical party tune. The phrase Do Wah Diddy Diddy was inspired by the doo-wop style vocals and the kind of carefree scat singing that was so popular in the late 50s and early 60s.
I know it. She was walking next to me singing.
It was very calculated, very deliberately styled to be instantly catchy and easy to sing along with, like they did a year earlier when they penned To Do Wrong Wrong. Since To Do Ron Ron was such a sensation with the all-girl group The Crystals, Jeff and Ellie imagined that a girl group would be singing Do Wah Diddy Diddy. I mean, it makes sense. So they followed the format. They chose the female-fronted group The Exciters to be the first to record Do Wah Diddy Diddy. The problem is it tanked. It stiffed. It only went to number 78. And then Manfred Mann recorded it. But it was a struggle.
Onto my door, then we kissed a little more.
Lead singer Paul Jones thought the song was ridiculous. Just silly. Too silly to take seriously. And even when he recorded it, there was real tension in the studio. The band even felt the song was just dumb and a sellout move for them. But their producer and managers were adamant. So Paul sang it as a joke. Of course, it became a smash. That's how it goes. When Jeff Barry heard Manfred Mann was going to cover it, he initially hated the idea of a male group recording the song. He just didn't think it would fit. Now, his position softened after he realized that the British invasion was a force to be reckoned with and that Manfred Mann's version could actually be what Jeff called a lucky charm. And of course it was.
We're so happy and that's how we're gonna stay singing.
Manfred Mann's Do Wah Diddy Diddy Dum Diddy Do with lead vocals by Paul Jones. I had to say the whole thing. It became one of the biggest songs of the decade. It perched at number 1 for 2 weeks in the UK, Sweden, and Canada, and 2 weeks at the top of the Billboard Hot 100. And then it became a hit all over again when it was used brilliantly in the movie Stripes. Come on, so cool. Coming in at number 5, I got Where Did Our Love Go by the Supremes. Now, interestingly enough, the original demo Where Did Our Love Go was sung with a different melody and a different arrangement. The version we know today was reworked extensively by the songwriters and producers to emphasize the catchy hook and emotional punch. Original Supreme Mary Wilson gave her take on it in an interview that I did. The late Mary Wilson. Here's what she said.
I talked with Eddie Holland, and I said,
Is this the story we were...
This is a story that I'm going to tell you. Because someone kept saying, you know, they gave it to the Marvelettes first. Well, Catherine and I are very good friends, Catherine of the Marvelettes. I asked her, I said, Catherine, were you guys given that song? They said, no. I said, I didn't think so either, because when Holland Dozier Holland came to us, they said, we wrote these for you, for the Supremes. And so later on, I think it was Lamont said that he just got tired of the same old story, because we do tell these stories over and over and over again, see? So sometimes you just got to change them up just so that, you know, whatever. And everyone says, no, they were written for the Supremes.
Where Did Our Love Go was initially met with skepticism by some industry insiders who, get this, doubted that a girl group could carry a hit of such emotional depth. It's crazy. Don't you want me no more? But Motown's relentless promotion and the passionate delivery by Diana Ross and the Supremes proved them fools. The song became a colossal hit, reaching number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and launching Diana and the Supremes. And they became a group that even the Beatles were scared of. Coming up next on the countdown of our Top 11 64, it's the first number 1 song for the Beach Boys from the LP All Summer Long. I've got I Get Around at number 4.
Round, round, get around, I get around, yeah, get around, round, round.
Among their many hits, I Get Around stands out as the ultimate anthem of teenage independence and freedom to cruise at will.
I gotta find a new place where the kids are hip.
The Cars, Girls, and Surf songs of the Beach Boys, this one stands out as a classic. I mean, late genius Brian Wilson had felt the pressure of not hitting number 1 on their earlier hits by his then manager and father, Murray Wilson, especially since Jan and Dean had upstaged the Beach Boys. They hit number 1 with Surf City in 1963, a song that Brian Wilson wrote but didn't give to his own band. And then, of course, the competition got even more fierce throughout the next few years when the Beatles hit the scene and truly dominated. So I Get Around with the B-side of Don't Worry Baby. That did the trick. Now, part of Brian Wilson's genius was how he could craft a sound that was both lush and energetic. He was able to capture the excitement of teen life in a way that few others could back then.
We always take my car, 'cause it's never been beat, and we've never missed yet.
Now, the famous intro riff, that was inspired by a guitar pattern that Brian Wilson heard in the surf rock record. Also, there's a Broadway song that inspired the song. He made it his own by adding a bounce that perfectly matched the song's upbeat vibe, though.
Round, round, get around, I get around, yeah, get around, round.
Another interesting thing is the song was one of the first in pop history to feature a prominent use of a snare drum mixed with a brush percussion sound, giving it that distinctive rolling feel. As well as the fuzz guitar sound, which Hendrix said was an influence later, especially when the Beach Boys were kind of uncool for a few years there, not by me. Joining the Beach Boys on the recording of I Get Around was the fantastic LA Wrecking Crew. On that particular recording, Glenn Campbell played the 6-string electric bass guitar along with fellow studio musician Ray Pullman. I Get Around cruised to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It also went to number 1 in Canada. And in the UK, the single crested at number 7. Our choice for number 3 on the top 11 of 64 is a story about a place in New Orleans with a sordid past known as the House of the Rising Sun, as told by Eric Burdon and his animals.
A house in New Orleans.
The House of the Rising Sun, it's a traditional folk song with uncertain origins. Musicologists believe it derives from the broader tradition of broadside ballads, which were popular street literature in the past. Now, thematically, it shares some similarities with earlier ballads like The Unfortunate Rake. That was a 16th century song that also deals with themes of downfall and despair.
'Tis she that has caused me to weep and...
It served as a source for St. James Infirmary blues.
Folks, I'm going down to St. James Infirmary.
However, there is no concrete evidence linking the House of the Rising Sun directly to these earlier works, and its precise origins remain unknown. It's just known as a really old song, even though it's been recorded by everybody from Nina Simone to Bob Dylan to Leadbelly to Woody Guthrie.
House in New Orleans,
And of course made famous by the Animals, and then later covered by Frigid Pink and many others. No writer has recovered the millions and millions of royalties because no one knows who actually wrote the song. It's crazy. Bob Dylan recorded a version before the Animals, but he didn't release it.
There is a house down in New Orleans.
So the Animals did, and in the process, they helped invent folk rock, or at least help put it on the map. Folk music historian Alan Lomax recorded a version with a 16-year-old girl named Georgia Turner who sang it in a first-person point of view, contemplating how the house of ill repute ruined her life. Can't say the other thing on here.
Never did I have that.
The only reason I bring this up is because later, when the Animals did the song, they changed the lyrics to describe a gambler, since they knew that radio wouldn't play it if they sang the real lyrics about a lady of the night. I can't believe I can't say these things on here. Here's what Eric Burden told me about it.
By then, I'd collected the lyrics that I could from Bob and from other folk people that I'd heard sing it. So somewhere we came up with a song that was lasting around 5.5 minutes. So everybody told us that it's too long, it's the wrong subject matter, and it's never going to work.
What was your interpretation of the lyrics? What did you think that meant? Because there's so many different theories out there about what the song means. What did you think?
Well, I changed it from female to male. I think that helped it get over with the public easier than accepting a male voice singing, "Be in the ruin of many a poor girl,"
And it's been the ruin of many a poor boy.
I really don't know why I did that. It just came naturally because I'm the guy and I'm singing it. So.
And God, I know I'm one.
Over the years, I took it to mean that in the wild life, the nightlife, the hanging out, drinking, creeping around brothels and all of that, it can be as damaging enough to the purchaser as the girl or the woman that's the slave to the system.
And God, I know I'm one.
Later, the Detroit rockers Frigid Pink made their mark with a cover of the song that went to number 4 in the UK and number 7 in the US in 1970. Very cool version. Eric and the Animals had an international smash with their emotional reimagining of House of the Rising Sun first, though. The single ascended to number 1 in Canada, Finland, Spain, the UK, and here on the Billboard Hot 100. Now, at the bridesmaid slot on our 64 countdown, I have the voice that mesmerized everyone, from Elvis to Dylan, and a track that came out of sheer spontaneity. At number 2, I've got the great Roy Orbison with "Oh Pretty Woman."
Walking down the street, pretty woman.
So one afternoon, Roy Orbison was at his house with his songwriting partner, a guy named Bill Dees, and he encouraged Bill to start writing by playing anything that came into his mind. And just then, Roy's wife, Claudette, walked into the room, and she told him that she was heading into town to buy something. Now, Roy asked her if she needed any money, and Bill Dees jokingly quipped, "A pretty woman never needs any money." That playful remark, kind of a flirting remark, sparked the idea that would eventually become Oh Pretty Woman. Bill recalled that Roy sang the chorus while he was banging his hand down on the table, and by the time Claudette returned from town, they had the song in the bag.
Pretty woman, won't you pardon me, pretty woman?
Which has to be the only time that a number one classic came from a wife getting money from her husband to go shopping. I can't think of any that I've heard all the stories of. From the moment that the rhythm started, though, Bill could imagine hearing the hills clicking on the pavement. Click, 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 with a pretty woman walking down the street in a yellow skirt and red shoes. That's what he said.
Pretty woman, stop a while. Pretty woman.
Roy Orbison's original version of Pretty Woman was actually recorded in a small studio in Nashville and out of a brainstorming session that came from some really cool spontaneity where he started playing the you know. In those tight quarters, Roy was experimenting with different sounds, and during a break, he called out to his crew, "Hey, pretty woman," walking down the street. And someone in the room cheekily responded with a cat call, which Roy decided to incorporate into the actual recording. It would get him into trouble a little bit later, I'll tell you about that. That perky moment became a fun, unexpected element of the song's charm, and it pushed the guitar riff forward. Roy and Claudette, they'd gone through some rough patches in the early 60s, but they finally reconciled and were back together in 64. Things seemed to be looking up, especially since Oh Pretty Woman was steadily climbing the charts. But then Roy found out that Claudette had been unfaithful, and he decided to file for divorce. Despite everything, though, they got remarried in 1966. Sadly, just 2 months after that, though, Claudette was tragically killed when the motorcycle she was riding was hit by a truck. And if that wasn't enough heartbreak for Roy Orbison, in 1968, Roy faced another devastating loss. His two oldest sons died in a fire at his home. This is while he was away on tour. This man dealt with a lot of pain. It was a period filled with incredible tragedy for him. But back to Oh Pretty Woman, this song was so groundbreaking for a couple reasons. Instead of starting out with a verse or a chorus, Roy flipped the typical song structure on its head. For one, he opened with the hook, and then the chorus repeated earlier than normal, and the final section is a complete dramatic shift, you think about it. The bold shift was ripped off by so many going forward, and then amazingly, the song was banned by a lot of radio stations for being too suggestive and sexually provocative because of the catcall and such. Crazy.
Now make it rain if you want to see some wet ass
mercy.
It became an even bigger hit 25 years later when it was used in the movie of the same name. It's actually one of the most requested songs of 1990. But the label didn't re-release it. Big mistake. Otherwise, it would have hit number one once again.
Big mistake. Big. Huge.
Similar to what happened with the Righteous Brothers and Unchained Melody. They actually screwed up when Top Gun did You've Lost That Love and Feeling and didn't re-release it then, so they learned from that mistake. And anyway, Oh Pretty Woman would have been number one again.
Don't walk on by, pretty woman.
Another interesting fact, Roy's name and the song is etched on a golden record that was sent aboard the Voyager spacecraft in 1977. Might be the first record heard by aliens, who knows? If they have a turntable. Oh Pretty Woman ran to number one on the music charts all over the world, including Singapore, Norway, Australia, Switzerland, Germany, Canada, the UK, and here on the Billboard Hot 100.
Oh, pretty woman.
This might be the most anticlimactic number one that we've ever done on these countdowns, because you know what it is. Our number one pick, top 11 songs in 1964, is the track that changed the landscape of music forever. The only band or artist in history to have all 5 songs in the top 10 countdown, dominating the top 5. And number one, I got the Beatles with I Wanna Hold Your Hand. Hold Your Hand ignited Beatlemania. American audiences mostly knew rock and roll as the sound of Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and Buddy Holly. Great artists for sure, but in 1964, the Beatles arrived with a bolt of raw energy and a sound that was fresh and truly infectious. spirit behind I Want to Hold Your Hand came from John Lennon's admiration for girl groups like the Shirelles. And the band worked really hard to tap into that youthful excitement in the recording that they felt when they heard a new song that captivated them. That's what they were going for. I Want to Hold Your Hand was a combination of a lot of influences that the Beatles had besides the Shirelles, though. There was a little bit of Chuck Berry in there. There was a little bit of Buddy Holly. There was a little bit of Elvis and a little bit of the Everly Brothers, all wrapped into just 2 minutes and 24 seconds. This song, they did something remarkable in 2.5 minutes, less than 2.5 minutes. Paul McCartney described the collaboration on I Want to Hold Your Hand as a very co-written experience, saying it was eyeball to eyeball. He disclosed that the song's title was likely inspired by the phrase, I want to be your man, which of course later became a Beatles song of its own. He said the songwriting process involved a lot of random phrases being thrown out until they found something that worked cohesively. They threw out a lot of really bad titles, and they were really bad until they landed on that one. Paul actually recalled being pretty bossy while counting the band in for the recording of I Want to Hold Your Hand, which he admitted was very annoying to his bandmates. It's hard to believe now, but I Want to Hold Your Hand nearly missed its chance to take the world by storm. Capitol Records in the US initially hesitated to release this song. They were just unsure if American audiences would accept a British band singing about youthful love. It was crazy, and there was some concern about market acceptance. Let me repeat that. They were unsure about American market acceptance of the Beatles.
3,000 screaming teenagers are at New York's Kennedy Airport to greet, you guessed it, the Beatles.
Actually, it wasn't until a few months later when the song had already started gaining popularity in the UK and through underground channels that Capitol decided to release it in the US. Even then, the song's rise, it was gradual. It was only after a performance on the Ed Sullivan Show in February 1964, yep, that legendary one that everybody saw. Everybody watched it pretty much in the country and fell in love with the Beatles. Of course, it achieved that feat in at least 14 other countries. But even more impressive, on April 4th, 1964, when the top 5 songs in the country were all from the Beatles. Please, Please Be was at number 5. I Want to Hold Your Hand at number 4. She Loves You at number 3. Twist and Shout at number 2. And Can't Buy Me Love at number 1. So yeah, the entire top 5 belong to one group, the Beatles. An unprecedented and still unbeaten record. Do you remember about a year ago, the New York Times had the headline, Is Taylor Swift Bigger Than the Beatles? And people opposed that. I remember there was a prominent DJ around here that put a post up that said Taylor Swift is bigger than the Beatles and Michael Jackson combined at this point. That is craziness. The Beatles were big with everybody. Everybody loved the Beatles. You can't even compare it. It's actually the stupidest comparison that's ever been made. Look, I'm not going to rip on Taylor Swift here. I'm just going to say the Beatles did something nobody's ever done. You know, people actually put down money to buy their records. You can throw out any streaming thing you want to throw out. That doesn't mean anything. People actually bought the physical product, paid their hard-earned money, and listened to it. And the Beatles had the top 5 spots on the, it's just unbelievable to me. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about the Beatles, but don't ever make that comparison. There's no comparison. The Beatles were the biggest ever. Actually, there was one artist that was a little bit bigger. I mentioned it on another episode in 1 year. I'll talk about that later. Anyway, leave us a comment about your memories of these songs. What are your top 11 songs? Did I get it right with the number 1 song? It was going to be a Beatles song. 64 belonged to them. So let's have a great discussion. Let's talk about what are the countdowns would you like to see? Let's have a great discussion. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, I'm telling you, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.